Welcome to India Prime. I am Aisha Sindhu. The Indian Armed Forces plan to reintroduce cordon and search operations to militant hit parts of the Kashmir Valley. The army says this decision predates the killing of its Lieutenant Umar Fayaz earlier this week, but his death has brought back into sharp focus the tenuous relationship between civilians and the armed forces in the valley. We'll get to the implications of that decision shortly, but before that, the Supreme Court wrapped up the second day of deliberations on triple talaq. It continued hearing the issue today, and the case, which is being heard by the 5-judge bench, claimed, and I quote, "It is the worst form of dissolution of marriage." The Chief Justice of India, Justice J.S. Kheher, observed that the practice was aberrant but still allowed. Now, Justice Kheher was responding to a submission by the senior Congress leader Salman Khurshid, who is appearing as the amicus curiae in the case. He said that triple talaq was sinful but lawful. Early on Thursday, a 5-judge bench led by the Chief Justice asked the petitioners and the central government to suggest alternatives to the practice if the court does indeed decide to declare triple talaq as unconstitutional. WION's Jessica Taneja spoke with Salman Khurshid. Listen in.
People are getting accustomed to sides, taking sides. They're not accustomed to someone who doesn't take sides. So no sides have been taken. The truth is what we are trying to put before the court, and hopefully if the truth is recognized by a court, then people will understand.
And what is the truth that you're trying to put in front?
The truth is that there's no such thing as triple talaq. It's so simple.
This is, of course, a contentious issue that is being looked at in India. But, of course, the implications of triple talaq, as we are given to understand, can be seen in the context of other countries as well, especially in South Asia. But India, most significantly, continuing with the practice called triple talaq or instant divorce. Joining me right now on the broadcast is Sundar Hurein, a senior lawyer from Islamabad, and also with us is our correspondent Raghvendra Rao, joining us from the newsroom. Raghvendra, I'll come across to you first. Is the fight against triple talaq in its decisive phase right now?
Well, absolutely, Aisha. There is no denying the fact that this contentious issue has finally reached a stage where it'll be a decisive fight, because the Supreme Court is conducting a day-to-day hearing into the matter. It has made time during its summer vacations to hear this very contentious issue. A constitutional bench comprising of 5 of the senior-most judges in the country are hearing this case. They are listening to all sides, and they have heard the petitioners in the case so far. Now the central government is expected to reply and is expected to state their side of the story, and they are likely to come out with their response to what the government of India stands for in the matter on Monday. That is what we are given to understand. So yes, and the kind of exchanges which are happening in the Supreme Court on a day-to-day basis, the kind of questions which the apex court is raising about religion, about fundamental rights, about constitution, about whether practices like the triple talaq are indeed fundamental to the religion of Islam,
right,
or whether these are practices which have just evolved over a period of time and are now being misused. All those questions are on the table, and yes, whichever way this trial, this hearing goes, yes, the end result would be a very decisive one.
All right, Sundar Hurein, when it comes to the tenets of triple talaq, there seems to be a lot of confusion here in India. If I can ask you, what in your view is the Shariat's observations when it comes to the dissolution or the ending of a marriage?
So this is a very contentious topic within Islam, and there's been countless debates within it. Now, if you look at the triple talaq, the way we understand it right now, which is orally delivered in one sitting, probably in the heat of argument, that is something that did not exist, during the time of the Prophet as it's in recorded history. This is something that did come about much later, and it is something that, ends up leaving the woman quite vulnerable. And so this is a situation that has, in my opinion, developed over time. If you look at practices at the time of the Prophet, this was a very different practice. It had to be delivered at 3 separate occasions. it couldn't be done in this way, and there had to be mediation efforts. It had to be at least 1 month apart. So it would be like a more protracted, longer way of doing it compared to right now. Right now makes it quite simple for the man, but very complicated for the woman.
All right, but when it comes to Pakistan, when and why exactly was the triple talaq process done away with entirely?
For these very reasons, because there were so many cases where men would divorce their wives and they would say it thrice, which is, under the Islamic sort of understanding, makes it permanent. But then later on, they change their mind and the woman would be marrying someone else, and then they would file a criminal case of bigamy against her, take criminal charges, blackmail her, say that, what proof do you have? Because she wouldn't. It was an oral divorce. So in that, there was a lot of problems around that. There was a lot of blackmail. There was a lot of, violation of rights. So because this became quite a social issue here, and after that, this was completely done away with. I mean, the problem still exists to some extent, but in a lot of ways now there are, if women have the awareness of their rights, they can prevent it.
All right, stay with me, Sundas. I'll just go across to Raghvendra as well. Raghvendra, obviously, this hearing has caught the nation's attention. How do you see this playing out politically, especially keeping the sort of alignments we've seen with the Congress in the past? They've been accused of lip service when it comes to dealing with minorities. And of course, the BJP now taking a very strong stance on wanting to wipe out the practice altogether.
There is no denying the fact that the Bharatiya Janata Party seized this opportunity. I mean, this was an issue which was waiting to be picked up, and it's an emotive issue at that. I mean, it's an issue which concerns a sizable section of the Muslim population. Now, the tragedy here is that Muslims per se, the minority Muslim community in India, has more or less always been treated like a vote bank and nothing else. Their issues only come to the fore, only assume limelight whenever there are some elections pending in the country. That's an irony. But the fact that a hardline right-wing party, often accused of targeting minorities, often accused of pursuing a Hindutva agenda, a Hindu agenda per se, and marginalizing the minorities, it is that party which has taken the lead here. And to their credit, they have really seized on this opportunity. The Prime Minister, setting the bar, because it is coming straight from the Prime Minister. He has taken, on more than one occasion, he has spoken about this issue before the Uttar Pradesh Assembly elections. Right. He made it a point to talk about this critical issue during his election rallies. That touched an emotive chord as far as the Muslim women in that state are concerned. That is also being viewed as one factor why Muslims, for the first time perhaps, voted in huge numbers for the BJP in that state.
Right.
So yes, a lot of politics is at play, but yes, nobody can fault the BJP for taking a lead on this critical issue, because this was an issue which was there for the taking, but none of the political parties, more so the ones which have often been accused of Muslim appeasement, they failed to make any kind of a right noise about this. Right. And they failed to take any substantive stance on this matter. And this is precisely what the BJP has done. It saw an issue there and it has made all the right noises. And the irony here again is that none of the opposition parties will be finding it very easy to say that they are for triple talaq. Right. It is an issue where any right-thinking party, any right-thinking individual will see it as some sort of a wrongdoing towards the Muslim women. And now the opposition parties are finding them in a catch-22 situation over that.
Absolutely. And we can't forget also there is the question of other practices that, of course, the Supreme Court has been very categorical about not looking at. Sundas, I'm talking about polygamy and nikah halala. Our Supreme Court here in India said that it's not touching upon those issues right now. But what exactly is Pakistan's stance on these practices? Are they widespread? Are they prevalent, or do they not exist at all?
Polygamy is very much inexistent. There are some legal checks and balances on it, like you need permission from your other wives, but it's still a very coercive institution, and it's pretty easy to coerce your wife. So there's a lot of rights violations that occur in that area. If you look at the halala thing, that is also something that is quite problematic. There is a provision within our law which says that at any given point in time, talaq is recognized as one talaq. not triple in one go under Pakistani law now, formally. So unless the 3 cycles of talaq have commenced, which involve attempts at reconciliation, unless all of that has ended, halala is not allowed. But then it's still sanctioned and it still occurs informally all the time. So it is a big problem.
All right. I'm going to leave it there for now. This is, of course, something that we'll be tracking over the next 5 or 6 days as India's Supreme Court continues its deliberations. But thank you very much, Raghvendra Rao and Sundar Suren, for joining us on the broadcast and sharing your thoughts and perspectives. We will, of course, move on to our next big discussion tonight on India Prime. The Indian Army in Jammu and Kashmir has decided to act tough. Signaling a strong intent and an aggressive stance, the Army has decided to bring back the Cordon and search operation 15 years after the practice was abandoned. Now, while this move does not appear to be connected to the outrage over the recent abduction and murder of Lieutenant Umer Fayaz, the move rather seems to be in response to increase in terrorist activity in the state. Now, the major areas that could be in the zone for these operations include Kulgam, Pulwama, Tral, Budgam and Shopian in southern Kashmir. Joining me on the discussion tonight to talk more about the implications of this decision is Gohar Gilani, senior journalist. He's joining us from Srinagar, and we're also joined by Lieutenant General Syed Atta Hasnain, the former General Officer commanding 15 and 21 Corps. He's also the military secretary and was rather the military secretary and now a public speaker, strategic analyst and author. Thank you, gentlemen, both for being here on the program. General Hasnain, I'll come to you first. Just for the benefit of our viewers, can you give us an idea of what exactly a cordon and search operations entail?
Right. Thank you. First of all, it's a pleasure being on your channel for the first time. And let me clarify this whole concept of cordon and search operations, which is very commonly referred to as CASO. You know, this is a concept which has been followed for very long, that wherever there is a generic problem in a given geographical area, the army needs to make sure that they have a certain domination of that area. When you say domination, it means that the terrorists or the militants should not have the freedom of action to be able to go and move around at will anywhere or conduct their activities. So the army generally moves around, shows the flag everywhere, shows its presence, to make sure that this freedom of action is not there. And to put it in a more focused way, when there's a general given area in which your domination is required to be more than the ordinary, you conduct what is called a cordon and search operation, in which by night you go and surround a given village or a set of villages. It is done by night, and in the morning there are different ways by which the local inhabitants of the village are taken out, concentrated in a particular area, and the houses are then searched by the security forces in the presence of the individual members of the house.
Right.
Now, there are certain rules of engagement in this. You are not supposed to conduct a cordon and search operations without the presence of the local police, civil police. That is an essential thing in it. And one of the other requirements which we generically put into it is that to offset the inconvenience of the public, we do conduct a small medical camp on the sidelines, or even offer refreshments and food to the inhabitants because they have been inconvenienced by our operations.
All right. Let me go across to Gohar Gilani on that note. Gohar, the general there breaking down for us what exactly CASO entails. Your thoughts on the reintroduction of this operation system in the Kashmir Valley?
I think first of all, the reintroduction of this CASO or cordon and search operations signifies a larger problem, and that's a political failure. It's a political failure of the political leadership across the board. It's also the failure of the present dispensation, which is led by PDP and in coalition with Bharatiya Janata Party, that the army has to go back to an operation which was abandoned 15 years ago. So this also highlights the ground reality that Kashmir is today. It is not because of, as is being projected, that there is a huge number of militants. All army officials and all security officials have said on record many a time, and police also issued a statement that there are less than 200 militants in the Kashmir Valley. While if you see the situation in the 90s, there have been more than 22,000 militants active in the valley. So in terms of numbers, the militancy is not an issue, and it should not be an issue for this large presence of Indian military already that is stationed in Kashmir. So the problem for New Delhi right now is the civilian revolt. It is the civilian population which is up in arms, which is revolting against the state and wanting a solution to this political dispute. And I am again reminded of one gentleman, the army officer, Lieutenant Huda, who said that army is losing a battle for a narrative in Kashmir. And it is because of the civilian population which is wanting a political solution that these tactics are being used to actually threaten the local population,
right.
Which is contrary to what Mr. Hasnan has said. Because now students are protesting, girl students are protesting, boys are protesting across South, North and Central Kashmir. You mentioned Budgam. Budgam had not seen much of a violence in last so many years, but now Budgam is also, people are protesting there. So it's like it's the civilian protests which have not been, which have not stopped since the assassination of Burhan Wani in last July.
All right, General Hasnan, obviously the conversation always comes back to the fact that there is a political solution that seems to be missing when it comes to Kashmir. But does the army have any other choice when schools are being gutted, when an army officer is abducted and murdered, when he's on vacation to attend a cousin's wedding? Does the army really have no choice but to bring in CASO or other similar systems to deal with the situation as it stands right now?
Firstly, let me just correct Gohar Saab. It's not Lieutenant Huda, it is Lieutenant General Dipinder Singh Huda, the Army Commander of Northern Command, who has made this statement.
Yes,
very important officer.
Absolutely.
Who has just recently retired. And secondly, I don't think in my generic description of CASO, I have alluded to anything political at all for any criticism of my statement in the beginning, because I only gave you a tactical understanding of what a CASO means.
Sure.
Now that you have asked me this question, let me allude to something more. You see, conflict is a very, very dynamic process, and none of my comments are going to be political, let me tell you that. I am going to keep it absolutely professional. Conflict is a very dynamic thing. There are ups and downs which take place. In 1990, we had a completely different situation. In 96, when we brought the elections, we had a different situation. 2004, when we went in for the LC fencing, we had a different situation. In 2008, when the stone throwing started, we had a different situation. And today is completely different again. So each time the situation changes, we change our stance. I agree that this is a very responsive way of doing it. Preferably, we should take the initiative and force the other side to respond to us. But having said that, today, why has the CASO method been chosen? This is an age-old method, as I was alluding to earlier. It was actually started in Nagaland,
right,
and Manipur, in those areas. The whole model was brought here to Kashmir. But let me come back and tell you, you see, the whole idea is domination. I agree with Gohar Saab, absolutely correct when he says there were a huge number of terrorists earlier, and we used to conduct not so much of cordon and search, we used to conduct again domination operations of different kinds at that time. And today, with a strength of about 300 terrorists, which is what everyone tells me, there is no reason why actually we do not have the domination of the situation. Let me tell you, in South Kashmir, what has particularly happened is that the Kulgam belt, the Kulgam-Shupian belt in particular, over a period of time, we have considered that this belt was getting peaceful.
Right.
And we kept on drawing out troops from there and sending them to the LOC to prevent the infiltration. And as a result, our hold over this triangle from Pulwama, Shupian, Kulgam, coming to Bijbehara, this has diluted to some extent. What we need, first of all, besides doing any CASO, is to first of all put in some more troops. It is not important to say that we have got 30,000 or 100,000 troops for 300 terrorists. The whole intention is not taken in terms of statistics.
Right.
It is taken in terms of the degree of domination that you have. We want to make sure that the terrorists do not rule the night or the day. They do not have the heyday available to them to be able to have the freedom of action, to be able to do what they wish. That is the whole idea behind this.
All right, let me come in there, General. Let me go across to Gohar. Gohar, you're talking about this being a youthful protest. The youth is responding now to the call in Kashmir. But wouldn't a move such as CASO, like the General's pointing out, also help in differentiating between terrormongers, terrorist harborers and Kashmiris who just want peace and for life to go on peacefully in the state?
When you talk about peace, it's currently the most disputed term in Jammu and Kashmir. Peace, when they talk about peace, they want peace with a solution, not a peace of graveyards, which New Delhi unfortunately is wanting to establish in Jammu and Kashmir. And it's a continuation of the famous Dowell doctrine, which is masculine, militaristic, which is trying to deal with a political problem through military solutions. I hope that Mr. Hasnan will also agree that even the Indian Army would not want to get into this mess right now. Because nobody wants to get involved when civilians are revolting, when civilians are wanting a political solution. So I think this only establishes political failure, and the onus is on New Delhi to address this problem politically and try to resolve it with Islamabad and stakeholders in Kashmir. Unless this militaristic, masculine, this domination, militarized policy will continue, I think this will further alienate the people of Kashmir, and this will further create more problems for the Indian state and for everyone who is concerned about so-called peace. The Kashmir, you cannot talk about Kashmir without contextualizing it, without historicizing the dispute. It is a dispute, and India has admitted now that it is a bilateral dispute. There's a joke going around on social media when people are saying, when international community tries to intervene and mediate on Kashmir dispute, India tells them it's a bilateral issue. And when Pakistan talks Kashmir with New Delhi, they say it's an internal issue. And when Kashmiris talk about Kashmir issue, Delhi says it is not an issue at all. So that is the problem. There's this double speak in Delhi who do not want to address the problem and do not want to accept the reality on the ground that people are asking, people are demanding a political solution according to the aspirations of the majority.
Okay, General Hasnan, Gohar bringing up the fact that the word peace itself has become contentious. I'm not sure of how many other words have become contentious when it comes to Kashmir. I'm going to be very careful in my choice of words at least. But how does the army propose to win back the hearts and minds of the local population? Gohar pointing out very categorically that there is resentment for the security forces in the absence of a political solution. I'm sure the armed forces are preparing themselves for a great amount of resentment once CASO is reintroduced.
Thank you, first of all. I think what Gohar Sahab has said is absolutely correct. There is a tremendous need for reaching out, for engagement, stakeholders, for bringing back peace, for winning hearts and minds. Now, these are all very loaded terms, and everyone has got his own understanding about it. In Delhi, there's a different idea, there's a different concept of thinking. In Jammu and Kashmir, there's a different one. The army thinks differently. The CRPF and the police may be thinking differently. What we need to do is to come back to a common ground. And let me tell you, the army has never lost sight of the fact that robust operations the world over have never won peace in a CI or a counterinsurgency situation of this kind. Robust operations always bring you to a plateau, to a level of stabilization. And from there, you have to take on the political process and take it to the next natural level. Unfortunately, this is where we have been failing each time. I know that, for example, in 2010, 11, 12, we managed to restore the situation to a great degree, and we hoped that the initiatives would follow, which somehow did not take place. Now, I also want to tell you that while CASO operations are going on, and these CASO operations are not of the same variety as they were in 1990 or beyond.
Okay.
I think at the moment they are extremely benign operations, very, very benign. They are just being done for domination. In the first operation, they have not even apprehended a single person as suspect or a terrorist, nothing at all. They have not even picked up any warlike stores. It is only showing the flag. I think that itself is a message to say that we are not going the whole hog. We're not going the whole way. Give us a chance. We will do it if you wish to do it in that manner. If you support the terrorists, if the terrorists are hiding inside your locations, obviously we are going to use a degree of hard power. But we are giving everyone a chance. At the same time, I would request everyone to have a look at the websites of Northern Command, of 15 Corps, look at the social media, the kind of activities which are going on simultaneously to engage with the younger people.
Right.
For example, I'll remind everyone, there's a thing called the Super 40, which is at one time it was Super 30. The army has taken on the entire responsibility of trying to train young Kashmiris to crack the IITG examination. And this year, I'm told, more than 30 people out of that have actually cracked the examination.
All right.
At the same time, we are also engaged with the local youth, on the aspects of employment, of skill development, many other aspects which are not finding the kind of publicity. Unfortunately, the media is not concentrating on that. The media is only focusing on all the robust aspects of operations because that's where the romanticism of conflict is all involved.
Okay.
I wish people would now go into the field and see what else is the army doing.
All right, I'll take that on the chin, the accusation towards the media, and take that across to Gohar. Gohar, General Hasnain is pointing out to some of the other initiatives taken by the armed forces. Perhaps the media is guilty of not highlighting them, but we're running out of time. Just in closing, if you could give me your comments on what you feel the army's role should be in Kashmir. You're saying that there's no political solution that's being reached. The army also there performing functions perhaps that they have no choice but to. So what should the relationship between the civilian population and the military be ideally, in your opinion?
You know, in my humble opinion, I think, you know, the army is also becoming a victim in this entire exercise and, you know, fighting somebody else's war. You know, somebody warmongering anchors in other channels who just want soldiers to die on the LOC or in the international border without looking at the larger perspective. I think now New Delhi has to understand that this Jammu and Kashmir has more than 60% of the youth population, which has a new vocabulary, where C means C for cordon, C for custody killing, and C for curfew, and they are demanding A for azadi. So that you have to understand, this is a new generation with a new vocabulary. You cannot just, you know, silence people of Kashmir through militarization and through you cannot talk to them through the barrel of gun. You cannot have this language of power and colonial mindset. You have to sit on the table and resolve this dispute according to the aspirations of the people. That would be my remarks at the end.
All right, Gohar, appreciate you keeping it short, and also thank you, gentlemen, for maintaining civility in this conversation. Always appreciate when voices are heard and the entire conversation goes to its logical conclusion. I'm going to have to wrap up the show on that note, but Gohar Gilani and General Ata Hasnain, thanks very much for joining us on the program. With that, it's a wrap on India Prime. I'm Aisha Sidhu. We'll be back with more news and updates after this very short break. Thanks for staying with us on WION. We'll see you in a bit.